Through each era in Vana'diel's history, there has been a king, a creature so fearsome, so difficult. Only the bravest adventurers dare challenge it, and only the foolish dream of actually defeating it. This position has been held by the likes of the Dynamis Lord, Absolute Virtue, Pandemonium Warden, Bumba, and now, Enraged Aminon. But no king reigns forever, and I'm here to announce the king is dead. What's going on, cat lovers? Welcome back. And you know what? It's been a long time. I've missed you guys. The fact is, though, there just hasn't been a ton of things to cover in Final Fantasy XI, so we've just been streaming. But today that all changes, with our good friend Enraged Aminon, possibly one of the sexiest looking notorious monsters we've ever had to deal with. Perfectly manicured nails, high heels on points, love it. For those not in the know, recently they updated Sortie to add an enraged version of Aminon. You have to kill him on this hard mode, this new hard mode, in order to get the Mesisodrites that are necessary to create your Prime Stage 5. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's kick back, relax, and let's do it. We're doing it together. It's going to be great. So for those of you that have any familiarity with Aminon, Enraged or otherwise, you might have noticed right off the bat that this method is a little different than other methods for killing this guy. We don't bother triggering Bane of Tartarus. That's only necessary if you're doing the Magic Burst method. And we also don't bother triggering different elemental states to get certain debuffs on. We just hit the ground running. We go right for it. We pull on Paladin, wait for Incessant Void, which is going to fully dispel, and then we get him in position, get our buffs up, and get going. The big advantage to that is we don't actually have to get the Rakaznar seal. It can come in handy if you make a mistake as the fight's going on. If Aminon does get a TP move off, we've had that happen. You will need to trigger Bane of Tartarus, and you're going to have to sacrifice your tank if you don't have the Rakaznar seal. But we've had that issue, and we were still able to win. It was fine without the seal. And other than that, this fight actually looks a heck of a lot like the Magic Burst method, the Death method. The only big difference is we're doing it with melee instead of spells. And so the name of the game here is TP Denial. Big time. I don't know if you guys read Vegito's post on how we're supposedly supposed to fight this thing, but it's ridiculous. You have to proc him every time he does a TP move by casting spells of the opposite element. It takes more spells every time he does a TP move. He actually does 2 TP moves back to back when he does do a TP. It's insanity. It ain't worth dealing with, and so we're not gonna. And when I say TP denial, I'm serious about this. We are not even going to engage Aminon and melee him. We're going to get TP just from Absorb TP, Tactician's roll, and the Dark Knight can take advantage of Occult Acumen, which is really nice. Now, to Weaponskill him without actually hitting him with a melee strike can be a little bit tricky, but I'm sharing you the macro right here. This is the one that I use to do CDC, and you can set up the same macro for whatever weapon skill or weapon skills you're going to be using on your job. I found that it's helpful, though, to not just have the slash attack after the wait to disengage. I also started hovering down on disengage because a couple of times it didn't, and especially if the Dark Knight triggers a triple attack or something like that, that could spell a TP move. So check out this macro, but also every time you do a weapon skill, be ready to disengage. So to pull off this TP denial strategy, we're going to be running with the party that you saw at the outset. We're doing Paladin sub Rune Fencer, Dark Knight sub Dragoon, Bard sub Dancer, Core sub Dark Knight, Geo sub Dark Knight, and Red Mage sub Dark Knight. And the crux of this entire method is everybody needs to be casting Absorb TP on cooldown. It's the most important aspect of this fight. And for the quick note on the Rune Fencer, sub Rune Fencer, that's really only going to be viable if you have Master Level 30 on Paladin, because you need access to Stone Skin. That's the most important thing for your Paladin. Keeping on Stone Skin so that you're taking 0 damage and you're really denying Aminon any TP generation. But if you don't have master level 30, Sub-Scholar is going to work fine. It'll bring you some other advantages, but the biggest thing is you need to have that stone skin. Let's talk a little bit about the buffs that you're going to be doing. So the easy ones are Corsair is going to be doing Tactician's roll and Chaos roll. Obviously, you don't need a Sam's roll because you're not going to be meleeing Aminon, right? You're not going to touch him. The Geo is going to be doing Indi-Fury, Geo-Frailty, and whenever Entrust is ready, Entrust Indi-Precision. The only buffs that are somewhat interesting are the Bard songs. So the songs are going to change depending on whether or not you have Soul Voice up. So when you have Soul Voice up, we're running with Honor March, Blade Madrigal, Valor Minuet 4 and 5, and Aria of Passion. When Soul Voice is down, we replace Aria of Passion with a second Madrigal. If you don't have Aria of Passion, it should be fine. Just use Valor Minuet 3 with Soul Voice up in place of the Aria. And then obviously when Soul Voice is down, it's going to look exactly the same. Honor March, 2 Valor Minuets, 2 Madrigals. And just as important as those buffs in this fight are the debuffs. They might even be more important. They're absolutely critical to pulling this off. So your Bard is going to keep up Dark Threnody on Aminon the entire fight. This is going to help your absorb TPs land reliably. And the Bard's also going to be keeping up Box Step, keeping 5 steps on the whole fight. We found that it can be a little bit hard to land the steps, so you might have to make a special set with really high accuracy so you can land Box Step reliably and just keep that bad boy going. The Red Mage is really going to be busy as hell with their debuffs because it's not just about having the right debuffs, but it's a little bit about the timing. So the debuffs you're going to be riding are Frazzle 3, Distract 3, Slow 2, Paralyze 2, and Dia 3. The first one you want to get up is Frazzle, right? When we're pulling Aminon, Posy gets the Frazzle on immediately, and that's just like the Dark Threnody. It makes sure that those absorb TPs actually are sucking that TP right out of Aminon. After that, you want to get the Slow 2 and the Paralyze 2 up, and the Dia 3. Obviously, Slow and Paralyzer to help reduce his TP generation. And the interesting debuff is Distract 3. You actually can't land it without Stymie up. And since you might only get one Stymie, Posy holds the Distract 3 until after the Soul Voice songs go down, and then he'll Stymie. This buys us like 9.5 minutes of Distract after the Soul Voice songs go down, which is, it's not bad. It's good to have. Also, you want to make sure you're using Saboteur anytime you're putting Frazzle 3 on. And Posy's told me that when his Frazzle 3 is about to come down, and if Saboteur's not quite ready yet, he'll just apply lower tier debuffs on Aminon until Saboteur's ready again, and then do the higher tier ones, and it'll overwrite with Saboteur. But as you can see, the Red Mage is going to be extremely busy, because you don't just have to manage all of those debuffs, you also have to make sure you're keeping up Haste 2, Refresh 3 on everybody, Weaponskilling Aminon, and don't forget those Absorb TPs, because missing just a couple of them can cause a real mess. And with that, that's really the general parameters of this fight. There's really not much else to it. Everybody has to ride their Absorb TPs. You have to weapon skill them when it's appropriate, keep the debuffs and the buffs going, and you go slow and steady. Right? There's not going to be any curveballs. He's not going to do any TP moves. Slow and steady. Keep Stone Skin going, heal when appropriate, and don't be a maverick. There's no need to ever engage him. Don't do anything silly. And just keep cranking. So now I'd like to talk about some of the specific roles of the job. So we talked a little bit about Paladin Subrune Fencer, right? The big thing is you're going to keep Stone Skin up all the time. Keep your Phalanx going. Use the Lux Runes, but if you don't have Master Level 30, remember, you're not going to have Stone Skin from Subrune Fencer, but you can use Scholar. That'll work perfectly fine. Dark Knight is Subdragoon for 2 reasons, right? Number 1, you're going to get better weapon skill damage. And number 2, if this could happen, it didn't happen to us yet, but you can use High Jump and Super Jump to shed hate to make sure Aminon doesn't turn. The Bard's going to be Sub Dancer for the box step. We did try it before with Bard Sub Dark Knight, but it seemed like we had the Absorb TP fully handled with everybody else's Sub Dark Knight, so it made sense to come back with Sub Dancer and get those box steps going, because, you know, less defense means you're going to hit him harder. It works great. And Core has Sub Dark Knight. A lot of people are like, are you sure you can actually land Absorb TP? But you can. Obviously, Dark Threnody and Frazzle 3 help a great deal in that regard. But you also might have to build a special Absorb TP set, but it's pretty simple. It's 5 pieces of Empyrean gear, right? All 5 pieces. A couple Stakini rings work really nicely. You can make an Ambu back with magic accuracy, and you should be able to land them reliably. Just like all these basement bosses in Sortie, Aminon does have the weapon skill wall, so you're going to need to mix up what weapon skills you're doing. Paladin, I was using CDC. It goes okay. I had to really tailor the set for it. At first, I didn't really have a set. I was just like using Sekpadas and not really any crit hit gear because I'm an idiot. I then switched to going full on with all the crit gear I could get, but then I didn't really have the accuracy, and it kind of evened out. I found a good blend of, I still use a Blistering Sallet, 4 pieces of Sekpadas for the accuracy, and then I do crit hit rate and crit hit damage. Or it's actually just rate. Crit hit rate on the accessories, including my cape. I have an Ambu cape for crit hit. The Dark Knight is primarily using Origin. That's the new Prime weapon skill. He's also throwing in Cross Reapers to help mix things up, and you feel free to throw in any other weapon skills you want to break up the weapon skill wall. Geo's doing Judgment. Red Mage is doing Black Halo. Bard and... I think Bard can do Rudras. And the Core's doing Savage Blade. And speaking of the weapon skills, if your Dark Knight happens to have the Prime Scythe and access to the Origin weapon skill, you can take advantage of Occult Acumen and TP really, really quickly. There's 2 pieces that Dark Knight gets that improves Occult Acumen, the Empyrean Feet and the Oneris Rope, which comes from Dynamis Bastok, the original Dynamis Bastok. And what you do is you cast Impact every time it's on cooldown, right? It costs 666 MP, which gives you a nice TP return, and then you can smack Aminon with Origin and boom, you got all your MP back. It's like a cheat code. It's excellent. And now just a couple little notes before we close it out. When you pull Aminon, we only do 4 songs at the outset because he's going to do a move called Incessant Void. That needs to happen. It's a full dispel. You only want the tank to get hit, so everybody else should stay a little bit back. The tank will get drawn in, he'll do it. As soon as he does that, you pull him into a corner where you want to do the fight, and that's when you start buffing. Once he's in the corner and everybody's in place, go ahead and get your 5 songs up, Soul Voice. Once Soul Voice is going, that's also when we bolster. So we just really go for it in that first 10 minutes. Remember, you're going to save your Stymie Distract until the Soul Voice songs are over. And I would wait until Stymie happens to try Wildcard. But you should go ahead and cutting cards the Bard as soon as they do Soul Voice and Clarion Call. The fight might take long enough where you can do it twice if you get a good cutting cards. But then, yeah, save the wild card until after Stymie happens, because maybe you'll get it back. Could be good. And another thing, if he does get a TP move off, right? Everything we've talked about so far is predicated on the idea that he doesn't do a TP move. If he does get one off, and you don't have the Rakaznar seal, that's fine. Your tank is going to die, but just make sure they have re-raise, and here's what you're going to want to do. So if he does one of his TP moves, you need to first proc him, right? You're going to proc him with the opposite element of whatever move he did. We're going to put those up there on the screen. After you've procced him, you now need to trigger Bane of Tartarus. How do you do that? You have to then start casting spells of the same element of his move to heal him until he does it. Bane of Tartarus is an AoE move. It's going to be based off the tank. And you want everybody else far away. What I like to do is I'll be on one side of Aminon and I'll make some distance between me and Aminon. And everybody else will be like way back there casting on him. He'll kill me. At that point, the fight, more or less resets. And you get the tank up, get him back in the corner, and just get right back to work. But you really need to be on top of those absorb TPs. If you notice that a couple have been resisted, or Frazzle was down a little bit too long, or if you just notice that you just took a large amount of TP off of them with one absorb TP spell, call it out and just say, hey, let's slow down, Let's just slow down. Let's get a couple more off, and then we'll get back to it. But if it does happen, you can recover. We had one fight where we triggered 2 TP moves. I got killed twice. It's fine. We got up. We finished the fight with almost no time left. And the Dark Knight did have to engage Amon and use Soul Enslavement in the last 30 seconds. But we won. And that's what's important. And guys, that's all I got. So, yeah, slow and steady, absorb TP, just keep fighting, and before you know it, you're going to have your 4 Mesisodrites, you're going to have your Prime Sword, or whatever Prime Weapon you're working on. Prime Sword, what am I talking about? And, yeah, I was going to play the rest of the video at 2 times speed, but I'm just going to play it at the regular speed, and maybe you'll tease out some details that I didn't go over in the chat log. I'll see you at the end. And that's it, guys. That's the entire fight. In some respects, this feels a little bit easier than the regular Aminon with the Magic Burst method. And something about doing melee, too, that just feels so satisfying. So far, we're up to 2 Mesisodrites out of 4 fights. So the drop rate seems fine so far, but we'll see how long it takes to actually get all 4. Yeah, it's good to be back on YouTube. I missed you guys. Remember, you can always catch us at twitch.tv/VelnerXI every day except Sunday, starting at 6:30 p.m. If you have any other questions, put them down here in the comment section, and we'll check them out. Guys, have a great night. We'll see you soon.